I want you to imagine an absolute nightmare scenario, like
Well,
the worst possible thing. You are out on a family trip in the woods, right?
just the setup alone is terrifying.
It is. So you turn your back for maybe a minute
Uh,
and you lose your 4-year-old child in a swamp.
well,
He's just gone.
poof, without a trace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for 8 agonizing months, you search, you grieve, you're, fearing the absolute worst. And then, by what seems like an outright miracle, he is found.
Oh, which never happens, right? That's incredible.
Right. So you bring him home, you raise him, he grows up, has kids of his own, lives this full life, and eventually passes away. And it's a complete happy story.
Until it's not.
Right. Until 90 years later,
Yeah.
a DNA test reveals a truth so shocking it just completely defies belief.
Yeah.
You didn't raise your son, you raised a complete stranger's child.
I mean, it sounds exactly like a psychological thriller, but it is a fully documented historical reality.
It's wild.
It really is. We are looking at a single event that created this century-long ripple effect, and it completely consumed 3 separate families, basically warping reality for everyone involved.
And that is exactly what we're unpacking in this deep dive.
Ah,
We're taking a hard look at the 1912 disappearance of Bobby Dunbar.
such an intense
Oh,
case.
totally. Let's set the scene. The date is August 23, 1912. We are at Swayze Lake in St. Landry Parish, Louisiana.
Which, despite the name Lake, is not exactly a beach vacation spot.
No, not at all. Looking at the historical descriptions, this was essentially this murky, alligator-infested swamp surrounded by super thick, unforgiving forest.
Real deep backwoods Louisiana.
Right. And we have the Dunbar family on a weekend camping retreat. They're wealthy, very prominent locals. The father, Percy Dunbar, is a highly successful real estate and insurance man.
A real pillar of the community.
Exactly. And his wife is Leslie. They have 2 little boys. 4-year-old Bobby, who is described as like stout, rosy-cheeked, wearing this little straw hat, and 2-year-old Alonzo.
So it was meant to be a relaxing getaway for a family that honestly was used to a very comfortable, insulated life. But Percy has to leave briefly to attend to some business, so he leaves Leslie with the boys.
And on the very morning they arrive, little Bobby wanders off to watch his father's friend, a guy named Paul Mizzy, shoot fish in the muddy water.
Which, pausing for a second, shooting fish in a swamp is just such a profoundly 1912 activity.
I know, right? Like, who does that for fun? But anyway, as lunchtime approaches, Leslie starts calling everyone back to the dining area.
Right, time to eat.
Yeah, so according to the newspaper reports, Mizzy and little Bobby are walking back, and Mizzy tells the boy to get out of the way so he doesn't get stepped on.
Which is fair. He's a tiny kid.
Exactly. And Bobby laughs, makes some kind of sassy remark back to him, and then, as the reports say, he just disappeared like magic.
It's chilling. One moment he is there making a joke, and the next the swamp has seemingly just swallowed him whole.
And what follows is an immediate, totally justified descent into sheer panic. Okay, let's unpack this, because a child vanishes in a swamp, and the response is basically an Amber Alert on steroids.
Oh, absolutely. But executed with 1912 technology and just pure mob desperation.
Right. The scale of this manhunt is staggering. Like, by the time Percy gets back around noon, there are already over 100 locals just tearing through the brush.
And the money they threw at this was insane.
Insane. The Dunbars offer a massive $5,000 reward. If you adjust that for inflation, that is an absolute fortune back then. And the local citizens and a bank throw in another 1,000 on top of it.
And out of sheer desperation, the methods they used became incredibly gruesome.
Yeah, I was reading this and it made my stomach turn.
It's rough because you have this murky swamp known for a massive alligator population. So the search party doesn't just look in the bushes, they start catching alligators.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they haul them out of the water and they're literally slicing open their bellies right on the banks to check for the boys' remains.
Just ripping them apart.
Exactly. They were looking for, like, bones, a tiny shoe, even just that little straw hat.
And when cutting open animals didn't work, they escalated to explosives.
Because of course they did.
Right. They started hurling dynamite into the water,
Ugh.
just setting off massive concussive blasts in the swamp, hoping the shockwave would force a submerged body to float up to the surface.
It paints this wild picture of a community driven completely mad by a lack of answers. I mean, they are tearing the natural environment apart with bare hands and explosives.
But, throwing dynamite into a swamp isn't exactly a sustainable search strategy. So when the physical search hits a literal dead end, Percy has to change tactics.
He realizes the boy is not in that water.
Right. So he turns to the mail. He sends hundreds of postcards featuring Bobby's photo and his physical description to town officials, police chiefs, and post offices all across the South.
We're talking Florida, Texas, everywhere.
Yeah, you name it. Which is an incredibly wide net to cast in an era way before mass communication. And remarkably, 8 months later, in April 1913, that net actually catches something.
It's a spark of hope.
Exactly. A telegram arrives from Columbia, Mississippi. And this brings us to William Cantwell Walters.
Ah, the tinker.
Yes, he is an itinerant handyman. He travels around doing odd jobs, fixing pots and pans, and he basically lives out of a horse-drawn tented wagon.
Very transient lifestyle.
Very. And the authorities in Mississippi spot him traveling with a young boy who looks remarkably like the photo on Percy Dunbar's postcard.
So Walters is detained by the local authorities, and, he immediately protests the accusation. He adamantly claims the boy is not Bobby Dunbar.
He has a whole different story, right?
He does. He says the boy's name is Bruce Anderson, and that he is the illegitimate son of Walter's own brother and a woman who worked for his family back in North Carolina named Julia Anderson.
Okay, so he's basically the kid's uncle.
Essentially, yeah.
Well,
According to Walters, Julia left the boy in his care while she went to look for domestic work, and he had simply been traveling with the boy ever since.
so Percy and Leslie rushed to Mississippi by train to see this boy. And this initial reunion, this is where the historical record splits into two very different realities.
The media played a huge role here.
Huge. If you read some of the newspapers from the time, the ones really eager for a feel-good cinematic story to sell copies, they reported it as this joyful, tear-jerking moment. Like, the boy instantly sees Leslie and shouts, "Mother!"
Right, the perfect Hollywood ending. But if you look deeper into the archival court documents and the actual witness testimonies, a much darker, much more hesitant version of the event emerges.
Yeah, it was super awkward.
In these accounts, Leslie is incredibly unsure. She looks at the boy, who is terrified and surrounded by police, and she says his eyes are too small.
She literally says, "I don't think this is my son."
Exactly. And the boy doesn't run to her at all. He physically shrinks away from her grasp and insists that his name is Bruce.
Yeah, Leslie doesn't confirm it's him right away. She takes him back to where they're staying, keeps him overnight, and it's only the next day, after giving him a bath, that she announces she is positively identified, like matching moles and scars on his body.
Which is convenient.
Right. Wait, I have to push back on this. You need to bathe your own child to check for hidden scars just to recognize him.
It seems completely absurd to us now.
It really is. It's like, okay, it's like when you really, really need money and someone hands you a clearly counterfeit $20 bill, but you convince yourself it's real just because you so desperately want to pay your rent.
That analogy hits the nail right on the head. But we really have to look at the underlying science of what is happening in Leslie's mind here.
You think she actually believed it?
I do, because this isn't just a simple mistake. This is a textbook case of motivated reasoning and false memory implantation.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, when the human brain is subjected to immense unresolved trauma, like the ambiguous loss of a child, it prioritizes psychological survival over objective truth.
So she just needed the pain to stop.
Exactly. Leslie had spent 8 months in a state of agonizing uncertainty. When presented with a boy who looked, close enough, her brain effectively overwrote reality.
That is terrifying.
It is. She built what she herself later referred to in a letter as a shell of grief. The desperation to end the nightmare physically altered what she perceived.
So she finds these matching scars and just announces she is certain. And the boy, who was 4 years old and terrified, perhaps picking up on the intense cues of all these wealthy adults around him, begins calling her Mama.
Kids that age are very adaptable.
They really are. So they return to Opelousas, Louisiana, to an absolute hero's welcome. Like, they throw the boy parades, they let him ride on the fire trucks. The whole town just celebrates the miraculous return of Bobby Dunbar.
Because the town desperately wants the neat, happy ending, too. But a New Orleans newspaper, smelling a lucrative scoop because of those initial rumors of Leslie's hesitation, decides to track down the other mother.
Oh, man, here we go.
Yeah, they find Julia Anderson in North Carolina and basically pay for her to travel down to Louisiana. This sets up this profound and just heartbreaking clash.
Julia Anderson's situation is incredibly tragic. Like, put yourself in her shoes. She is a destitute, single mother in an era where that carried massive, massive social stigma.
They had everything working against her.
Everything. And her story matches Walter's perfectly. She says she allowed him to take young Bruce on what was supposed to be a 2-week trip to visit relatives in Georgia.
Right, just a short trip.
But Julie had to leave to care for a sick sister. They lost touch, and those 2 weeks turned into an 8-month wandering journey.
Because there were no cell phones, no easy ways to track someone down.
Exactly. And now she is ripped from her life, brought into this insane media circus in Louisiana,
Yeah.
and asked to identify her son in a lineup of several boys.
And in that incredibly intimidating environment, surrounded by wealthy locals, hostile police, and flashing cameras, she hesitates.
Which is so understandable.
Totally understandable. She asks if one of the boys is the one they found, and they refuse to answer her. They're testing her, and she admits she is unsure.
And even though she comes back the very next day, totally confident, stating clearly that the boy is indeed Bruce, the damage is already done.
She's late.
Yeah, the media and the courts completely turn on her. They frame her as this unfit, illiterate mother who couldn't even recognize her own child.
And she has absolutely no money to fight a protracted legal battle against a powerful family like the Dunbars.
So what happens to her?
She is forced to return to North Carolina empty-handed. They took her child, which leaves William Cantwell Walters to face the full wrath of the 1912 justice system.
The tinker?
Right. He's put on trial for kidnapping, which is vital to note here, was a capital offense in Louisiana at the time. He could have been executed.
Wow, wait, they would kill him over this.
Yes, hanging. And he maintains his innocence the entire time. There is this haunting quote from a letter Walters wrote while sitting in his jail cell facing the death penalty.
What did he say?
He wrote, "The heartstrings of weeping mothers bind not my withering limbs, and the crime of kidnapping stains not my humble threshold door."
Okay, that is incredibly poetic for a traveling handyman.
Right. It really speaks to his conviction. But despite testimonies from people who had seen Walters with Bruce long before Bobby even vanished, the jury convicted him.
How does that even happen?
Well, what's fascinating here is that in 1912, the legal system functioned very differently than it does today. We didn't have blood typing or DNA to settle disputes of identity.
Obviously.
So the courts relied heavily on character witnesses and social standing as a proxy for hard forensic evidence.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Exactly. The Dunbars were considered good, upstanding people. Julia Anderson was a poor, unwed mother, and Walters was a transient. The court effectively decided that the prominent family's word was the forensic truth.
Okay, wait, so if he was convicted of a capital offense, how did he survive? Was there new evidence that came to light later?
No, it wasn't new evidence at all. He spent 2 years in a brutal prison before his attorney managed to get the conviction overturned on a wild legal technicality.
A technicality?
Yeah, it turns out there was an omission in the Louisiana kidnapping law at the time. The statute specifically criminalized the kidnapping of female children, which was a reaction to fears of human trafficking, and it had these archaic provisions regarding slaves, but it simply had a loophole where it failed to explicitly cover the kidnapping of white male children.
You're kidding. You have got to be kidding me. They sentenced a man to die, and the only reason he walked free is because of a typo in state law.
Exactly that. Just a complete oversight in the drafting of the law. And because it would have been too expensive and messy to rewrite the charge and retry him, he was released.
Wow.
They let him walk out of prison, but the boy remained with the Dunbars.
That makes me really wonder about the boy himself. I mean, did this 4-year-old just go along with being Bobby because he liked riding the fire trucks? Like, did he realize that living in a massive house with stable meals was just objectively better than bouncing around in a tented wagon?
From a developmental psychology standpoint, a child that age adapts to their environment purely for survival.
So he just played along.
Well, imagine being plucked from a wagon and placed in a mansion where you are showered with affection, given a new identity, and highly rewarded for accepting it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Any memories of a wandering life with Julia or Walters would fade incredibly quickly under the intense reinforcement of a wealthy, stable family telling him exactly who he was every single day.
Wow, so he just
becomes
Bobby Dunbar. He grows up, serves in the military, gets married, works as a salesman in electrical supply, has 4 kids of his own, and dies of a heart attack in 1966.
An entire lifetime.
Yeah. He lived his whole life insisting he knew exactly who he was. And the story should have just faded into history right there. Just a bizarre footnote. But, science eventually catches up with the family secrets.
It always does. Decades pass, and Bobby's granddaughter, a woman named Margaret Dunbar Cutright, starts digging into the case in 1999.
What made her look into it?
She gets her hands on a massive scrapbook of old clippings from her father, Bob Dunbar Jr., and she starts reading the actual court transcripts. She sees the glaring contradictions in the witness statements.
She starts seeing the cracks.
Exactly. And against the very strong, very vocal wishes of her extended family, who understandably want to leave the past buried, she pushes for the objective truth.
Good for her. So in 2004, she convinces her dad, Bob Jr., to provide a DNA swab.
Which was a huge leap of faith for him.
Totally. And they compare it against the DNA of a cousin, the son of the real Bobby Dunbar's younger brother, Alonzo, the brother who was actually on that camping trip in 1912.
And the results were absolute and definitive.
Zero relation. Bob Jr. did not share any DNA with the Dunbar family line. The boy pulled from the wagon in Mississippi, the boy who rode the fire trucks and lived an entire life as Bobby Dunbar, was definitively Bruce Anderson.
The science doesn't lie, but the fallout from that revelation is just a massive emotional whiplash for everyone involved.
I can't even imagine. Because on one hand, you have complete vindication for the Walters and Anderson families, right? William Cantwell Walters wasn't a kidnapper. He was telling the truth the whole time.
And Julia Anderson wasn't a liar.
Right. And looking at the sources, Julia actually went on to have 8 more children, became this beloved nurse in her community, and would make these intricate little broom straw booties for her kids.
She built a life.
She was a good, capable mother who had her son completely stolen by the state. But on the Dunbar side, it was a total implosion.
Oh, it tore them apart.
Margaret is ostracized by her own family for uncovering this. They have to face the incredibly uncomfortable reality that their ancestors essentially committed perjury to claim a child that wasn't theirs.
And poor Bob Jr.
Yeah. Bob Jr., who just found out his entire biological identity is a lie, handles it with this heartbreaking grace. He simply said, "My daddy's still my daddy."
It forces us to confront how deeply people will bury uncomfortable truths to protect their established narrative.
Yeah.
But it also highlights that family is forged by bonds and shared lives, not just biology. Bob Jr. loved his father, regardless of the name on his original birth certificate.
Okay, but before we completely close the book on the DNA, we have to talk about this fascinating counter theory I found digging through the Web Sleuth's Reddit threads in our source stack.
I love the Reddit theories. Lay it on me.
Okay, so what if the DNA test isn't telling the whole story? What if Bobby Dunbar's wife, or Alonzo's wife, was simply unfaithful? If someone had an affair down the line, it would result in a broken genetic line that has absolutely nothing to do with the 1912 kidnapping. So genetically, the cousins wouldn't match, but the boy pulled from the swamp could still have been the real Bobby.
Okay, this is a fantastic example of critical thinking, looking for alternative explanations for anomalous data.
Right, because it happens.
A broken genetic line due to infidelity is absolutely a real phenomenon in genealogy. We see it all the time. However, when we evaluate a theory, we have to look at the totality of the historical context.
Okay, hit me.
The infidelity theory would require a massive, almost impossible coincidence to overlap perfectly with all the existing red flags.
Because of all the other evidence.
Right. You have to combine the DNA evidence with the affidavits from multiple locals in Mississippi who knew Bruce Anderson and Walters well before Bobby ever went missing.
Oh, right. People knew Bruce.
Exactly. And you have to factor in Julia Anderson's consistent claims, Walter's unwavering defense even when he was facing the actual death penalty, and of course, Leslie Dunbar's initial hesitation.
The eye size, the shrinking away.
Yes. All the historical pieces align perfectly with the boy being Bruce. The proof is just overwhelming.
Which brings us back to the psychological core of this entire ordeal. To me, this is one of the most profound, terrifying examples of confirmation bias.
Without a doubt.
Leslie Dunbar wanted her son back so badly that she bent reality to fix her broken heart. She convinced herself that a stranger was her flesh and blood.
And it demonstrates the terrifying power of prominence, too. A wealthy family was able to manipulate reality using the media, the police, and the justice system to legally erase a poor boy's identity and claim him as their own.
Just because they could.
Simply because they had the resources and the social capital to do so.
We spent a lot of time thinking about what happened to the real Bobby Dunbar in that swamp. The sources point to a pretty grim reality, a 4-year-old slipping into muddy water, a predator leaving no trace.
It's the most logical, albeit tragic, conclusion.
But there is a totally different, maybe even more haunting question to leave you with today. Think about the boy who lived. Bruce Anderson was taken at 4 years old. He lived his entire life as Bobby Dunbar.
His whole reality.
He answered to the name Bobby. He loved his children as Bobby Dunbar. He died and was buried under a headstone that reads, Bobby Dunbar.
It becomes a profound philosophical question of identity, much like the ship of Theseus.
Exactly.
If every part of a person's lived experience is replaced by a new narrative, who are they really?
If a lie is lived fully and completely for 80 years, loved by everyone around it, at what point does the lie become the truth?
Is our identity just the story we all eventually agree to tell?
Something to think about the next time you look in the mirror.